Barry Bonds isn't just the greatest baseball player to ever play the game. On top of that, he's also the sport's most infamous cheater. But the steroids aren't even the biggest reason why he was disliked. He was lazy, money and attention hungry, rude to reporters and fans, an abuser and a cheater, and fought his own teammates and coaches on multiple occasions. If you take a quick look at Bonds' family, it's no wonder he turned out as talented as he did. His godfather, Hall of Famer Willie Mays. His cousin, Hall of Famer Reggie Jackson. His father, 14-year MLB vet Bobby Bonds. Basically, he was born to be a baseball god with all the talent around him. And while Bonds was talented from a young age, he was also lazy and cocky. In school, he wouldn't study and would often sleep. He often skipped or was late for practice, and during games, he loved the showboat so much that it led one scout to put asshole underneath the attitude and personality section of his scouting report. Barry was projected to go in the first round of the 1982 MLB draft after batting near 500 with 41 RBIs in his senior year. But when he announced that his father, Bobby, who had just retired due to a severe alcoholism, was going to be his advisor, he fell into the second round of the San Francisco Giants. His father requested more money than the Giants were willing to shell out, and so Barry was heading off to college to go play for the Arizona State Sun Devils. In college, it was difficult for Barry to make friends, and he really wasn't liked by his teammates. He would steal his teammates' food from their apartment, gave little effort defensively, would skip practice, ignore team rules, and would parade around letting everyone on the team know how good he was after losses. This obviously fed up his teammates, and after he was caught out past curfew yet again on a road trip to Hawaii, his coach suspended him and gave the team the opportunity to vote on whether or not Barry should be kicked off the team. Despite Barry leading the team in home runs and RBIs, every player but two voted in favor of kicking him off the team. His coach, not expecting this, said that since the vote was not unanimous, Barry would get to stay on the team and would instead have to run 10 miles as his punishment, which Barry would never end up doing. When Bobby Bonds heard that Barry was being punished, he drove his Mercedes onto the field in the middle of a closed practice, parked it in front of the dugout, and told the coach, "If you mess with my son, I'll own this school." The following season, it was the baseball team that was facing punishment, not Barry. As it turns out, the head coach and team psychiatrist were pushing antidepressants with dangerous side effects to players going through slumps, which led to multiple players being suspended, the team's 1984 conference championship being vacated, and the team being suspended from postseason play in 1985. This didn't stop Barry from popping off, though. He had a .368 batting average with 23 homers and 66 RBIs, and was named an All-American as he got drafted 6th overall to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Within a year of being drafted, Bonds was playing for the Major League squad as the leadoff hitter, a spot in the lineup that he would call home for the next 4 seasons. It didn't take long for Bonds to start ruffling some feathers, though. He had become known for his poor defense because he would play extra shallow and attempt to hide his weak arm, and the team was forced to trade for a new center fielder in Andy Van Slyke and move Bonds to left field. This upset Bonds, and after Van Slyke took home a Gold Glove in 1988, Barry told him, "Next year, I'm going to win me one of those." It took him 2 seasons, but starting in 1990, he went on a streak of winning a Gold Glove in 8 out of the next 9 seasons. Bonds and Van Slyke would actually beef pretty frequently while playing together. In 1988, after Bonds got thrown out at home after jogging, Van Slyke met him at his locker and told him, "If you ever do that again, I'm going to kick your ass right on the field. I'm not going to wait." This of course upset Barry, and the two began throwing punches. They were broken up by 5 or 6 teammates a couple seconds later, who then picked up where Van Slyke left off and began beating Bonds senseless as well. Despite Bonds and Van Slyke not getting along, they managed to lead the Pirates to the playoffs in 3 straight seasons from 1990 to 1992, with Barry winning MVP in both 1990 and 1992. But when the playoffs would come around, Barry would disappear. Across the 3 playoff appearances the team had, Barry hit .191 with 1 lone home run, but by far his worst playoff mistake came in the field. In Game 7 of the 1992 NLCS, the Braves had the bases loaded with 2 outs and the Pirates leading by 1. Van Slyke noticed Barry playing deep and told him to move up so he would have a better chance to make a play at the plate. Barry responded to his advice by flipping him off, and just seconds later the game-winning hit was hit straight to him, and his throw home was beaten by mere inches. This marked the end of Barry's time in Pittsburgh, as entering the offseason he was looking to become the highest paid player in MLB history, something the Pirates weren't going to be able to afford. He would end up signing with the Giants for 6 years and $43 million, a price that was too expensive for even the Yankees to match. And like everywhere else he'd been in his career, it didn't take long for him to piss people off. Upon signing with the Giants, he announced that with Willie Mays' blessing, he was going to be wearing number 24 as a Giant. This pissed Giants fans off, and after the team received a record amount of calls and letters complaining, Bonds chose to wear his father's number, 25. They couldn't stay mad at Bonds for long though, as in his first season in a Giants uniform he took home MVP after a ridiculous season where he had a .366 average, mashed 46 home runs, and drove in 123 RBIs. The Giants wouldn't make it to the playoffs until 1997, but Barry continued to play at an MVP level, finishing every season from 1994 to 1996 with over 1,000 OPS and at least 30 homers. But while he was playing great, not everything was sunshine and rainbows. He was finding his name in headlines for the wrong reasons. In 1995, he was going through a messy divorce with his first wife, and during the hearing, she accused him of abusing her throughout their marriage, telling stories of him hitting her while she was pregnant and in front of their oldest child. Bonds wouldn't face any punishment from the MLB or the law, but it wouldn't be long before he found himself in the headlines yet again for laying his hands on someone, because in 1996, he pushed reporter Rob Beaton to the ground while he was waiting for an interview with one of Bonds' teammates. Bonds Bonds once again didn't face any punishment and didn't even bother apologizing, telling Beaton that he felt like he had an attitude. Despite all the distractions that he had going on off the field, he did manage to bring the Giants back to the playoffs in 1997, after the Giants traded to bring him in a new sidekick and second baseman Jeff Kent. The two would form a dynamic duo in the Giants lineup, with both of them making the All-Star team and finishing near the top of the league in MVP voting pretty much every year that they were together, but they never really got along. Kent stole a lot of the limelight from Bonds because he would put up impressive RBI numbers, reaping the rewards of Barry getting on base so frequently. After the 1998 season, Bonds' frustration with the lack of attention he was receiving hit its peak. He nearly finished the season with a 30-30 season, finishing with 38 homers and 28 stolen bases, batted over 300, had an OPS over 1,000, got intentionally walked with the bases loaded, and became the first player in MLB history to achieve both 400 homers and 400 stolen bases in a career, something that another player hasn't even done to this day, and yet nobody even cared. Not only did he not even make the top 5 for MVP voting in the season, but the focus of the media was on the home run race between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, who were both juiced to the gills on steroids. Fueled by the need to reclaim a spot in the spotlight, Barry began working with a new trainer, Greg Anderson, who would introduce him to steroids. Coming into spring training in 1999, Barry looked like he had eaten Barry over the offseason. He came into the spring weighing nearly 50 pounds heavier than he had the season before. His hat size had increased 2 sizes. He went from his size 42 jersey to a size 52, and his shoe size went from a 10.5 to a size 13. But his body couldn't handle how fast he'd put on the muscle, and he would miss a lot of time in 1999 with a torn bicep. The next season, he would come back healthy and set a career high in home runs at 35 years old, but he would lose out on MVP to Kent despite having superior numbers. But Bonds just used this as motivation. The following season, Bonds would break Mark McGwire's home run record with 73 home runs, and just as he was finally being viewed somewhat positively in the public eye, it would come crashing down. Shortly after signing a 5-year, $90 million contract extension prior to the 2002 season, an article from Sports Illustrated would come out detailing how bad of a problem steroids in the MLB had become. In it, Bonds' name was mentioned as a possible user due to his giant increase in size, and now questions were being raised about whether or not he was actually using them. That year would also be the season that the feud between him and Kent would hit its peak. During a game against the Padres, third baseman David Bell misplayed a throw to second base, prompting Kent to get in his face screaming. Bonds surprisingly came to Bell's defense, and the argument between Bonds and Kent turned into a physical fight that was caught on national television. The two were broken up by Dusty Baker, who downplayed the situation, saying, "It ain't a problem. Usually this happens on good teams. Bad teams always get along." The two would put their differences aside and together led the team to the World Series, where Barry would break his trend of being a playoff choker and put together what would be considered one of the greatest World Series performances of all time. But unfortunately, after getting out to a 3-2 series lead, the Giants would choke the final 2 games of the series to end Barry's dreams of becoming a World Series champion forever. Just when Bonds thought it couldn't get worse, it did. In 2003, federal agents conducted a raid on the Bay Area Laboratory Collective run by Victor Conti. Bonds had been introduced to Conti by his trainer Greg Anderson, and as it turns out, Conti had been supplying Bonds and various other athletes with performance-enhancing drugs over the years. Bonds would be forced to testify before a grand jury, but would deny that he'd ever taken steroids knowingly, saying that his trainer had told him that they were flaxseed oil and rubbing ball. He might have been able to get away with it if it hadn't been for his mistress telling the media that she had seen Bonds taking steroids and detailed the changes that his body went through and how abusive he had become towards her while on them. Due to his evasive answers during the trial, he was indicted on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. Despite being the face of baseball's biggest scandal ever, he still managed to perform at an all-time great level. He took home MVP in 2003 and 2004, led the league in OPS, shattered the single season and career record for intentional walks, and was on pace to break the all-time home run record entering the 2007 season. And on August 6, 2007, he would pass Hank Aaron with his 756th career homer. But the majority of the baseball world refused to celebrate it, with the general consensus being that it was tainted. Unfortunately, after finishing the season with an OPS over 1,000 and once again leading the league for on-base percentage, he would not receive a single contract offer from any teams in the league. Bonds felt like this was a case of collusion, but nothing would come of it because the teams argued that they didn't want the baggage that came with a player being indicted by the US government. In 2011, Bonds would finally be convicted on charges of obstruction of justice, but not the perjury charges. He was sentenced to 30 days of house arrest, but in 2015 the decision would be reversed. Unfortunately for Bonds, the damage was already done, and to this day he has not been voted into the Hall of Fame. He has crept closer and closer every year, and maybe one day we'll see him enshrined in the Hall of Fame. What do you guys think? Should he be inducted? Is the hate justified? Comment what you think down below. Don't forget to subscribe. We're on the road to 300 subs, and until next time, peace.